I stared at my phone in disbelief. My mother had just called, inviting me to dinner at my parents' house. It had been months since we'd last spoken, and years since I'd visited them. I'm Donna, 32 years old, and the black sheep of my family. Or at least, that's what they think. Growing up, I was always second best. My younger sister, Melissa, was the golden child who could do no wrong. She was prettier, more charming, and had this way of making everyone love her, especially our parents. It wasn't that they were cruel to me, they just clearly preferred her. The dance recitals they'd miss because they were too busy. They'd somehow find time for when it was Melissa's turn. The average grades that earned me lectures somehow became doing her best when they came from my sister. I sighed, putting my phone down on my kitchen counter. The marble felt cool under my fingertips, a small luxury in the apartment I never told them about. Why had Mom called now? What did they want? Fine, I muttered to myself. I'll go. A week later, I pulled up to my parents' modest suburban home. I'd deliberately dressed down, jeans, a simple blouse, and minimal jewelry. Nothing that would indicate I was anything but the struggling middle manager they thought I was. Taking a deep breath, I rang the doorbell. Dad opened the door. "Donna, come in, come in." His welcome seemed genuine but distracted. As soon as I stepped into the living room, I saw why. Melissa was holding court on the couch, Mom and Dad's attention, fully focused on her as she gestured wildly, telling some story about her workplace drama. She paused mid-sentence when she saw me, her perfect smile never faltering. "Oh, the prodigal daughter returns," she said, her voice dripping with false sweetness. Mom jumped up. "Donna, honey, we're so glad you could make it." She hugged me briefly, then immediately returned to her spot beside Melissa. I settled into an armchair across from them, watching as Melissa's eyes scanned my outfit with barely concealed contempt. "Love the thrift store chic look," she said, smirking. "Thanks," I replied simply. Not all of us need designer labels to feel good about ourselves. Dad cleared his throat. "So, Donna, your mother's made a lovely dinner. Should be ready in about 20 minutes. We made awkward small talk until Mom announced dinner was ready. As we gathered around the dining table, the same one from my childhood, Dad poured wine for everyone. Melissa immediately launched into stories about her job at a firm. "They practically begged me to take on the Johnson account," she was saying. "Said I was the only one who could handle it." "That's wonderful, sweetie." Mom beamed, reaching over to pat her hand. Dad turned to me suddenly and, "What about you, Donna? Still at that same company?" "What was it, assistant manager?" I took a sip of wine before answering. "Still at Berkshire Financial. Yes." Melissa snorted. "God, Dawn. You've been there, 8 years now? Most people would have moved up by your age. I mean, I've been promoted 3 times in 4 years." I could feel my jaw clenching. If they only knew that I'd been Berkshire's financial director for the past 3 years. That my annual bonus alone was more than Melissa's yearly salary. That I'd been featured in Business Weekly's 40 Under 40 last year. But they didn't know, because they'd never asked, never cared enough to keep up with my life. Instead of correcting her, I simply smiled. "Not everyone has your drive, Mel. We're her talent," Mom added, serving Melissa another helping of mashed potatoes. The conversation continued in this vein throughout dinner. Melissa bragged about her impressive salary, her jealous coworkers, and her upcoming Hawaiian vacation. My parents ate it up, asking follow-up questions and showering her with praise. Not once did they ask anything meaningful about my life. "I'd been saving for Hawaii for months," Melissa was saying. "But when you make good money, it's not that hard." She shot me a smug look. "That sounds wonderful," I said, pushing my plate away. "But I should probably get going. Early meeting tomorrow." "Thanks for dinner, Mom." I stood, gathering my purse. Mom walked me to the door while Melissa and Dad remained at the table. "It was good to see you, honey," she said, patting my shoulder. As I drove back to my downtown apartment, I couldn't shake the feeling that there had been some ulterior motive for my invitation. Whatever it was, I was glad to be heading home. Back in my spacious apartment, I kicked off my shoes and poured myself a proper glass of wine, not the cheap stuff my parents served. Just as I was settling onto my balcony with a view of the city skyline, my phone pinged. A message from Melissa. "Hope you're not too down about your sad little life, sis. Not everyone can be successful, I guess. Don't worry, though. I'll send you a postcard from Hawaii." I stared at the message for a long moment, then burst out laughing. If she only knew. I closed the message without responding and took another sip of my wine, looking out at the twinkling city lights from my 28th floor luxury apartment. I didn't always have such a strained relationship with my family. When I was very young, before Melissa was born, things were different. I have faint memories of my dad tossing me in the air, my mom reading bedtime stories. But everything changed when Melissa arrived when I was 4. She was the perfect baby, rarely cried, always smiling, with these big blue eyes that seemed to enchant everyone who looked at her. By the time I was 10, the pattern was clear. Melissa was special, and I was just there. I tried everything to win their approval. I joined every club, studied until midnight, volunteered on weekends. In high school, I was valedictorian, debate team captain, and yearbook editor. But when I gave my graduation speech, scanning the audience for my parents' proud faces, their seats were empty. They had taken Melissa to her dance competition instead. That day, something broke inside me. I realized nothing I did would ever be enough, so I stopped trying to impress them and started living for myself. I got a full scholarship to Princeton, graduated with honors, and landed a job at Berkshire Financial. Within 5 years, I was managing my own team. 3 years ago, I was promoted to financial director, and I never told them any of it. I was jarred from these memories by my phone ringing. It was Mom again. I hesitated before answering. "Hello?" "We're having a family gathering next Saturday. Everyone will be there. Aunt Carol, Uncle Jim, your cousins. We'd like you to come." I frowned. "What's the occasion?" "Oh, just a family meeting. There's something special to announce." Her voice was deliberately vague. I should have said no. Every instinct told me to stay away. But curiosity got the better of me. Fine. What time? For a clock, and Donna tried to dress, appropriately. I hung up, seething, appropriately, as if I normally showed up in rags. Saturday arrived, and I stood in my walk-in closet, deliberating. I finally chose a simple black dress. Chanel, though. You'd only know if you recognize the subtle stitching and fabric quality. To the untrained eye, it looked modest, but it cost more than Melissa's monthly salary. When I arrived at my parents' house, cars lined the driveway. I recognized Aunt Carol's sedan and Uncle Jim's truck. Taking a deep breath, I headed inside. "Donna," Aunt Carol exclaimed, pulling me into a hug. "It's been years. Look at you, all grown up and so sensible looking." I forced a smile. "Good to see you too, Aunt Carol." For the next 15 minutes, I made small talk with relatives I barely remembered, all while watching my parents and Melissa huddled in a corner, whispering and occasionally glancing my way. Whatever this announcement was, they were clearly excited about it. Mom finally called everyone to the dining table, which had been extended to accommodate the 15 or so family members present. Once we were all seated with plates of food, she stood and tapped her glass with a spoon. "We've gathered you all here today for a special reason," she began, beaming. "Melissa has some wonderful news to share." Melissa stood, clearing her throat, dramatically. 2 weeks ago, she announced, her voice dripping with satisfaction, "I bought my own apartment in Westridge Heights." The room erupted in applause. Westridge Heights was indeed one of the nicer areas in town, though far from the most prestigious. "It's a gorgeous 2-bedroom, Melissa continued. "Mom and Dad helped with the down payment, of course." She blew them a kiss, which they received with beaming smiles. "When's the housewarming party?" Cousin Brian called out. Melissa simpered. "Oh, I haven't decided yet. Still getting everything perfect." I smiled to myself, taking a sip of water. Good for her. It was a nice accomplishment, even if she needed our parents' help. Mom suddenly turned to me, her voice unusually loud. "Donna, you haven't congratulated your sister." All eyes turned to me. Melissa giggled. "She's probably just jealous. Not everyone can afford property in this market." My parents exchanged knowing smiles. Then Mom, making sure everyone could hear, said, "Well, it'll be a long time before Donna can match this achievement. Property ownership is for those with real careers." The table fell silent, everyone watching for my reaction. They expected embarrassment, perhaps tears or stammering excuses. Instead, I laughed, a genuine, spontaneous laugh. "Actually," I said, "I bought my place 2 years ago." Melissa's smile faltered. "A condo, you mean, or a townhouse?" I took another bite of food, chewing slowly, making them wait. "No, it's an apartment, 4 bedrooms, corner unit, with a wraparound terrace in Lakeside Tower." Gasps around the table. Lakeside Tower was the most exclusive address in the city. "That's impossible," Melissa sputtered. "You're a middle manager. You couldn't afford a broom closet in Lakeside." I dabbed my lips with a napkin. "I've been financial director at Berkshire for 3 years now. My salary and bonuses are comfortable." The shock on their faces was priceless. Dad's fork clattered onto his plate. "Financial director?" he repeated. "Why didn't you tell us?" I met his gaze evenly. "None of you ever asked." A heavy silence fell over the table. Then Mom's expression suddenly softened. "Darling, that's wonderful news. When are you having your housewarming? We'd love to see this apartment." "I had my housewarming 2 years ago," I replied calmly, "with friends." Mom's smile stiffened. Melissa's face had turned an interesting shade of red. The rest of my relatives were looking at me with newfound interest, as if seeing me for the first time. Uncle Jim raised his glass. "Well, congratulations, Donna. That's quite an achievement." Others murmured agreement, while my parents and Melissa sat in stunned silence. As dinner continued, I noticed how everyone suddenly wanted to talk to me, ask about my job, my life. People who had barely acknowledged me for years were now hanging on my every word. I didn't stay long after my revelation. The atmosphere had become unbearable. My relatives suddenly fawning over me, Melissa sulking in the corner, and my parents switching between shock and an unsettling eagerness to reconnect. I made my excuses, after dessert, citing an early morning meeting. "But it's Sunday tomorrow," Mom protested, following me to the door. "Global markets don't sleep," I replied, which wasn't entirely untrue. I did have a call with our Tokyo office, but not until the afternoon. The drive home was strangely liberating. For years I'd hidden my success from them, partly out of spite, partly because their opinion had stopped mattering long ago. Now that the truth was out, I felt oddly light, but also wary. My apartment welcomed me with its familiar comfort. I kicked off my heels and collapsed onto my living room sofa, staring at the city lights through the floor-to-ceiling windows. The revelation at dinner replayed in my mind, and suddenly everything clicked. The random dinner invitation last week, today's family gathering, it all made sense now. They'd wanted to showcase Melissa's achievement and, by contrast, highlight my supposed failures. They'd gathered the entire family to witness my humiliation. Instead, they'd ended up looking foolish, and now they were scrambling to adjust to this new reality where I wasn't the family disappointment. I was still processing this when my phone began buzzing incessantly. First my father, then my mother, then Melissa. I silenced it and turned on a movie instead. Whatever they wanted to say could wait until morning. When I finally checked my phone, the next day, I had 17 missed calls and numerous text messages. Most were variations of "call us immediately and we need to talk." I ignored them all and went about my Sunday routine, yoga, brunch with friends, and preparation for the upcoming work week. By evening, the messages had taken on a more urgent tone. Finally, a lengthy text from Mom appeared. "Donna, we need to speak with you. Your father and I have given this a lot of thought. We've always supported Melissa financially because we thought you were struggling too much to ask for help. Now that we know you're doing so well, we believe as family we should all support each other. Melissa's having trouble with her mortgage, payments. As her successful sister, surely you could help. Call us back immediately." I stared at the message in disbelief, then started laughing so hard I nearly dropped my phone. The audacity was breathtaking. After years of neglect and favoritism, after attempting to humiliate me in front of the entire family, they now expected me to bail out their golden child. I typed a response. "I'm not interested in discussing this. You wanted to embarrass me yesterday, and now you're asking for my help? Please don't contact me again about this matter." I could see the 3 dots appearing and disappearing as Mom started and stopped typing multiple times. "Finally, you're being selfish, Donna. This is what family does. If you refuse, you're choosing to exclude yourself from this family. Think carefully about this." I didn't bother responding. Instead, I poured myself a glass of wine. There was a strange sense of finality to it, a chapter of my life closing. It hurt, but less than I expected. The next morning at work, I immersed myself in quarterly reports and budget meetings. Being financial director of a major firm kept me busy enough to push family drama to the back of my mind. By midweek, I'd almost forgotten about the whole ordeal. Then my assistant buzzed my office. "Ms. Williams, there are 2 people in reception insisting on seeing you. They say they're your parents." I froze, my hand hovering over the keyboard. "Tell them I'm in a meeting." They said they'll wait as long as necessary. I sighed, weighing my options. Give me 5 minutes, then send them in. I quickly tidied my desk and straightened my suit jacket. When my parents walked in, their expressions were a mix of awe and determination as they took in my corner office, with its sweeping views. "Nice place," Dad said, his eyes lingering on the awards and certificates displayed on my credenza. "Thank you. What can I do for you?" I kept my tone professional, as if they were any other unexpected visitors. Mom stepped forward. "Donna, we need to discuss Melissa's situation. She's struggling with her mortgage payments and with your financial success." "No," I interrupted firmly. "I'm not paying Melissa's mortgage." Dad's face reddened. "Now listen here, young lady. Family helps family. Your mother and I have always..." "Always what?" I asked quietly. "Always been there for me? Always supported me equally? Always showed up for my important moments?" They exchanged uncomfortable glances. "That's different," Mom said. "Melissa needed more attention. She was more sensitive. And now she needs more money, and suddenly I'm family again." I shook my head. "You didn't consider me family when you missed my high school graduation, or when you forgot my college commencement, or any of the dozen birthdays and holidays I spent alone." "You're being ridiculous," Dad snapped. "We're your parents. Biologically, yes. But you stopped acting like parents years ago." I stood, signaling, "The end of our meeting. I have work to do." Mom's expression hardened. "If you turn your back on us now, you'll regret it. Family is all you have in the end. I have friends who've been more family to me than you ever were." I pressed the intercom. "Nancy, please show my visitors out." As they left, Dad turned back. "You're making a terrible mistake, Donna. This isn't over." The door closed behind them, and I sank back into my chair, emotions swirling. Part of me wanted to cry, but a stronger part felt relieved, as if I'd finally excised something toxic from my life. I threw myself into work over the next few weeks, extending my hours and taking on additional projects. If my colleagues noticed any change in my behavior, they were professional enough not to mention it. I declined invitations for after work, drinks, and weekend brunches, preferring the solitude of my apartment, or the distraction of long runs along the riverfront. Then, almost a month after the confrontation at my office, my phone rang with an unfamiliar number. "Hello," I answered cautiously. "Donna, it's Aunt Carol." I relaxed slightly. Aunt Carol had always been the least judgmental of my relatives, though we'd never been particularly close. "Hey, Aunt Carol, what's up?" "I thought you should know what's happening," she said, her voice lowered as if she was afraid of being overheard. "Your parents are telling everyone that you're a terrible person. They're saying you refuse to help your sister even though you're swimming in money and now they're struggling to make her mortgage payments." I laughed dryly. "Let me guess. Mom's taken extra shifts and Dad's working weekends?" "Exactly. How did you know?" "Because that's the narrative they want. Poor, hard-working parents sacrificing everything for their struggling daughter while the selfish, wealthy one refuses to help." Aunt Carol hesitated. "So, is it true? About not helping them?" "Yes, it's true. I'm not paying my sister's mortgage. Can I ask why?" I sighed, pacing my living room. "Aunt Carol, do you remember my high school graduation? Of course you were valedictorian. Your speech was lovely. My parents weren't there. They went to Melissa's dance recital instead. They didn't come to my college graduation either, or when I got my first promotion, or my second. They didn't even know I'd been made financial director until I told them at that dinner. For years they've treated me like I was invisible unless they needed something to compare Melissa to." I paused, my throat tight, and now, suddenly, they're interested in my life. Only because they think I can solve their problems? The line was quiet for a moment. "I didn't realize," Aunt Carol finally said. "I knew Melissa got more attention, but I didn't know it was that bad. I just thought you should know what they're saying. Thanks for the heads up. I appreciate it." After hanging up, I wandered to my balcony and looked out at the city skyline. Was I being cold-hearted? Maybe. But years of emotional neglect had taught me to protect myself. My parents had made their choice long ago, repeatedly choosing Melissa over me. Now they could live with the consequences. The next morning, I made a decision. Opening my laptop, I booked a 3-week vacation to Europe, something I'd been putting off for too long. Paris, Rome, Barcelona. I'd visit museums, eat at amazing restaurants, and not think about family drama at all. As I finalized the bookings, my phone lit up with a text from my mother. "Your sister got fired yesterday. Now she definitely can't make her mortgage payments. If you don't help, she'll lose her apartment. Is that what you want?" I stared at the message, shaking my head at the manipulation. I typed back, "What I want is for you all to handle your own problems like adults. I'm going on vacation for 3 weeks. Please don't contact me again." I blocked her number before she could respond, then did the same with my father's and Melissa's. It was drastic, but necessary. I couldn't move forward if I kept getting pulled back into their drama. The day before my flight, I had lunch with my closest friend, Tara. We'd met in college, and she'd been my rock through every career milestone and personal crisis. "So you're really cutting them off?" she asked as we settled into our favorite bistro. "I already have," I replied, spreading my napkin on my lap. I blocked their numbers, and I told security at work not to let them in again. "Wow," she stirred her iced tea thoughtfully. "Are you okay with that? They're still your family." "Are they, though?" I looked out the window. Family is supposed to support you, care about your achievements, show up when it matters. They've never done any of that. The next day, as I boarded my flight to Paris, I felt lighter than I had in years. The seat next to me was empty, a small luxury on a long flight. I settled in, opened my book, and prepared for takeoff. Just as the flight attendants were closing the doors, my phone pinged with an email notification. It was from an unfamiliar address, but the subject line read from Dad. I hesitated, then opened it. "Donna, Your mother and I are disappointed in your childish behavior, blocking our numbers, refusing to discuss family matters. This isn't how we raised you. Melissa is struggling, and as her sister, you have a responsibility to help. We've had to dip into our retirement savings to cover her mortgage this month. Is this really the daughter we raised? A selfish woman who puts luxury vacations above family needs? Think about your actions while you're gallivanting around Europe. I deleted the email without responding, then put my phone in airplane mode. The engines roared to life, and soon we were climbing above the clouds. Below me, the city grew smaller and smaller until it was just a speck, and then nothing at all. For 3 weeks, I immersed myself in art, history, and culture. I walked the streets of Paris at dawn, watched the sunset from a Barcelona beach, and ate gelato by the Trevi fountain. I took hundreds of photos, but shared none on social media, where my family might see them. These moments were for me alone. On my last night abroad, sitting at a small cafe in Rome, I realized something. I wasn't angry anymore. The hurt was still there, a dull ache beneath my ribs, but the burning resentment had faded. My parents and Melissa had made their choices, and I had made mine. We were all living with the consequences. When I returned home, tanned and refreshed, my apartment felt even more like a sanctuary. On my kitchen counter was a stack of mail, bills, magazines, and a postcard from Tara who'd gone to Seattle for a conference. Nothing from my family. I unpacked, ordered takeout, and settled onto my balcony with a glass of wine. I was free, not just financially, but emotionally. The path ahead was mine alone to choose, unburdened by expectations and old wounds. I raised my glass to the night sky and smiled. Here's to moving forward,